What is up, everybody? We are back with another episode of Where Stats Meet Instinct. I'm your host, Sam. You can find me on Twitter at Straight A's. So, today we are going to talk about the X factors on this roster, the guys that are really going to make or break the A's season one way or another. So, that's kind of how I defined X factor when I was thinking about this specific group of players. If we look back at the end of the year and the A's had a really good season, we're going to say these few guys are a massive reason why the team took a step forward. Like these guys taking a step forward individually led to the team taking a massive step forward individually. And with that is also the downside. If the A's don't have a good season, we're going to look at these guys that I'm going to bring up and we're going to say that guy not taking a step forward or not performing up to expectations was a really big reason why the A's were held back this year. So these are the guys that I think are going to make or break the A's season one way or the other. So I picked four guys that we're going to talk about today. One from the bullpen, one from the rotation, then one from the infield, one from the outfield. So there's four guys that I think this season really rides on, right? And these aren't going to be guys that everyone expects to be good, right? So you're not going to hear like Nick Kurtz on this list because I think everybody to some degree expects him to be a really good player this year. You're also not going to hear guys like Austin Wynns because if they're not good, if Austin Wynns hits 180 as opposed to 280, it's not going to be a huge deal. He'll be replaced fairly easily and the A's will move on from him, right? So these are guys with important roles on the roster. They're all probably, I'm going to guess 90%. I'm 90% confident all of these guys will make the roster. So they're going to have big roles, but they might be guys that, again, have a great season, and that leads the A's to a ton of team success. Or they could have a rough season, and that's going to lead to the A's really kind of stagnating and not taking the steps forward that we expect them to. So we're going to start with number 4 on this list, and we're going to go with Elvis Alvarado. So Alvarado is a guy that you look at in the bullpen, and I've said this previously. I think of the guys that were in the bullpen last year, he's the guy who has the best chance of being the A's long-term answer at closer. And he also has a really good chance of being a complete non-factor this year. So what does this guy do well? First of all, this guy just looks like a guy that you don't want to see coming into the game late if you're an opposing team. He's 6'4". It's all arms and legs coming at you, and it's 101 mile an hour fastball. So when you think about what a closer looks like, man, this guy really fits that profile. This guy's going to come in and throw the baseball incredibly hard. He's going to miss a lot of bats, and he's a guy that can have a lot of success. Like all four of these guys I'm going to mention, I think have all-star upside, but they also have downside of maybe not even factoring into the A's season after May. So Alvarado is a guy that misses a ton of bats. That's what he does really, really well. He actually has two downsides, and I think one of them is obvious, one of them is a little bit less obvious. So the main drawback to Elvis Alvarado is he tends to walk guys. He walked 4.7 guys per 9 innings last year. And it's really easy when you watch him pitch to kind of see why he would walk guys. He kind of has this delivery where he slings the ball. And it just seems like there's a lot of moving parts to him. And because of that, even though his walk rate wasn't the highest in the bullpen last year, there were guys like Tyler Ferguson and Hogan Harris who walked as much or as many or more per 9 than he did. But this is just a guy you can see how things can unravel on him. And when you watch him, he's either really good or he's in a situation where you're just praying he can find the strike zone. Obviously, walks are a big factor with him. The other thing that's kind of a factor is people assume just because a guy throws hard, his fastball is not going to be hit if it's in the zone. And that really wasn't the case for Alvarado last year. His hard hit rate was pretty high, meaning hitters hit the ball hard against him. And they typically did that against the fastball. So although he's a guy that throws 101, when he's falling behind in the count and hitters are anticipating fastball, they're able to connect and they're able to make good contact on that. On top of that, he's kind of the opposite of Jacob Lopez in a lot of ways. So we talked about Jacob Lopez last week on the show. and how he's a guy that really gets elite extension, meaning he releases the ball really close to the plate. For all the length Elvis Alvarado has, he's the opposite of that. He was only in the 8th percentile for extension. So this isn't like a be all end all. This is not a huge deal. But the fact that you combine, he doesn't have very good extension, meaning he's releasing the ball further away from home plate, on top of the fact that his fastball does kind of get hit when it's in the zone, you can see how that can kind of add up to be a problem. Now, I think both his problems have the same solution. I think it's just a matter of commanding the fastball, getting ahead in the count. Because his slider is good. It doesn't have like crazy break to it or anything, but his fastball really runs to the arm side. And so the little movement his slider does have really, really throws hitters off. And he had just massive swinging strike rates on that slider. Those two pitches, when they're working together, are really, really difficult to hit. And because of that, he racks up strikeouts. This is a guy that if he starts commanding the fastball a little bit better, I think there's a legitimate chance this is an all-star reliever. This is a guy that can lock down the back end of games, and he can have a lot of success and be one of those guys moving forward that you say, all right, this guy's going to be in the back end of our bullpen for a long time. And that's something the A's really don't have. When you look at their bullpen right now, the big question is, okay, they have a lot of arms I would consider solid, but no one that you would really consider lockdown. Well, this is one of the potential answers as a lockdown guy. You could also move some of the starters like Jack Perkins to the bullpen and all that. But right now, in the bullpen, the guys who were in the bullpen last year, this is the one guy I think can really be a lockdown guy. And on the other end, like we talked about, he's an X factor, which means it can go really well or it can go really poorly. This is a guy that could walk the yard and be in the minor leagues in May and not resurface for a long time. You've seen this with the A's with guys like Zach Jackson a few years ago, where he was their setup guy one year and the next year he just couldn't find the strike zone. Or Michel Otanez last year, where he, throws 100 miles an hour, and the year before it really came together, and then the next year the command really kind of goes away. So this is a guy that I really think fits the definition of an X factor, meaning it could go really, really well or it could go really, really poorly. But at the end of the year, you look back, the A's bullpen is really good. That's a big reason they have success. You're going to point to this guy and say, hey, this guy was a big reason why. So that's number 4. Number 3, we are going to shift over to the infield. We are going to talk about Max Muncy. So Max Muncy, the A's have put some pretty high expectations on him. Obviously, they drafted him in the first round. Mark Kotze this spring basically said his pick as a breakout candidate. And more than likely, it's looking like he's going to get the first shot at being the A's everyday third baseman. Now, last year, he started out really bad. Both offensively and defensively. He went back down to the minors. He came up late in the year, and he kind of started to put things together. You see the tools with this kid. Like, this kid is incredibly athletic, and this is a kid I've seen play since his sophomore year in high school. This guy is a really, really special athlete, but you don't always see it on defense. You do see it in the batter's box, though. This guy has really good bat speed, really good raw power, and that started to show up late in the year. And you've seen it show up a little bit in spring training so far. We'll talk a little bit at the end about what I think is important to look at in spring training and stuff like that. But it's obvious when you watch this guy, like there's raw power, there's speed, there's some baseball instincts to him too. And this is his chance to really put it together. The infield's not going to be a spot that's easier to get into the lineup next year than it is this year. You have upward pressure from a lot of these minor leaguers. Everyone's going to talk about Leo, but there's a lot of guys in the minor leagues that are going to provide some upward pressure on Max Muncy. So if he wants to lock down his everyday spot as on this team, if he wants to assert himself as a core player, it needs to be this year. And he's going to get the opportunity to do that. So can he take the step forward? Because last year, you look at his overall numbers, he wasn't very good. Now, he flashed really good, but he wasn't very good. Is he going to be able to take that step forward like Kotze thinks? So I think this kid has a chance to hit 20, 25 home runs. I think he could hit more than that. I think his raw power is enough. He puts up some real exit velocities. He's got some bat speed. I think the power could be even more than that, but I think safely, if he has a good year, he can settle into that 20 to 25 home run range and really provide some thump at the back of the order. I don't think his average is going to be super high this year. I think a good year for him would be hitting, 235 with 22 home runs and playing decent defense. I think the A's would sign up for that. And I think that would make the A's really, really deep. Because if that's your 8-hole hitter, if your 8-hole hitter is hitting 235 with 22 home runs, I think that's something that the A's can definitely benefit from and would sign up for right now. I do think there's all-star potential. Like, I think there's a chance this is more of a 240 with 30 home run type guy. But just to kind of go on the safe side, I think those are kind of my estimates of like what a good year would be, 235 with 22 home runs. Now, my bigger question about Muncy actually is not his bat. It's his glove. So I don't think he was very good defensively last year. And this is something that always kind of surprises me because, like I said, this kid is a really, really good athlete. This kid's a really good athlete, but you don't really see it show up in the field. To me, he looks a little bit stiff and a little bit tentative in the field. You can see his arm at times. The arm strength is fine, but it just seems like the accuracy comes and goes a little bit. I also don't see him as a guy that's comfortable throwing from a lot of different arm slots, which is really important as an infielder. So the throwing kind of worries me. And then he's not as rangy as you would expect for a guy with his athleticism to be, which tells me he's just not fully comfortable. I think all the tools are there to be a league average third baseman. But going into this year, I don't expect him to be a league average third baseman based on what I saw last year. Hopefully he can develop into that. But I do think it's important for him to develop as an infielder this year more than he did last year. And this is something the A's have said too. And I mean, just through their actions, the A's have tried to sign guys that were glove first infielders during the offseason. They made an offer to Ha-Seong Kim. They made an offer for Nolan Arenado. These are guys that would have probably played third base, and their glove is their calling card. So the A's are telling you they want better defense out of the third base spot. The A's have other options on the roster that provide a pretty good floor for defense at third base with Ibanez and Brett Harris. So this is a guy that needs to take a step forward in the field. I believe in the bat. I want to see the glove take just as big of a step forward as I think the bat will. So again, we're talking ceiling on this guy. He doesn't need to be a guy that hits 270. He doesn't need to do that. He's going to hit at the bottom of the order. If he can provide some pop out of the bottom of the order and hit 20 home runs out of the 8 spot, that's great. And I don't think the A's will be looking for a new third baseman next year if he hits 235 with 20 home runs and gets close to league average defense. But that also is expecting some pretty big steps forward, both offensively and defensively from this kid. So is he going to do that? I don't know. But the thing is, there's a good chance he loses his spot too if he doesn't hit in the first couple months. And the A's need this guy to be good. The other third base options don't provide nearly the ceiling that Max Muncy does. Max Muncy's ceiling is significantly higher than the other third base options, but the other third base options do provide a higher floor. I think all of Andy Ibanez, Brett Harris, Daryl Hernandez all provide a little bit of a higher floor, especially with their gloves. So this guy needs to play well when he gets his opportunity, and this might be his 1 year where he gets this starting opportunity with the A's, so he needs to take advantage of it. So those are my thoughts on Max Muncy. Now we'll get into the starting pitcher that I view as an X factor, and this is a guy you heard me absolutely rave about on my episode last week, but it's Luis Morales. You have a guy with special stuff, special frontline stuff, but he's going to go into probably his first year with an extended look in a major league rotation. And you consistently see guys that have a cup of coffee at the end of 1 year do really, really well in the rotation. But then when they have to do it for an entire season, it's really up and down. And that's kind of what I said I expect from Luis Morales. I 100% believe in this guy's talent. I believe that 2 or 3 years from now, he's going to be established in this A's rotation. But this year, there's a lot of pressure on the back spots, on the last two spots in the rotation. There's some guys that are probably going to push for rotation spots and look to take a rotation spot away from Luis Morales. So if he does have the up and down year that I kind of expect, is he going to be able to hold that rotation spot? Or is he going to be a guy that maybe shifts to a different role, or is even in AAA if there are extended struggles in the big leagues? We talked about his underlying numbers last year weren't actually that good. But the stuff, the ingredients, the performance last year on the surface, all this stuff was really, really good. And this guy could be the ace. And he also could be a guy that maybe isn't in the rotation come mid-season if there are real struggles. But again, this is the guy with the highest ceiling in the current rotation right now. And he's got one of the highest ceilings in the entire organization. This guy could be a guy that starts game one of a playoff series for you. Like, that's how good his stuff is. That's how good he could be. Is it going to be this year? Right? Is it going to be this year? I'm not worried about his slow start to spring training. Kind of my general thoughts on spring training, there are only positives that can come out of it this early unless there's injuries. Injuries are the only negative. Because if there are negatives you see, like a guy's velo is down, or a guy's getting lit up, or a guy's not hitting, a lot of times guys are working on different things. They're trying to improve an area of their game that's not the strongest, and they're really going to emphasize that in spring training. So that can lead to a lot of struggles for pitchers. It can be throwing a new pitch. It can be leaning on your third pitch to get outs. It can be trying to locate your fastball in the location that you typically don't locate it as well. For a hitter, it can be working on mechanical adjustments. It can be working on different things. So I'm not worried about underperformance this early. I do think there are positives to come out of spring training this early, and I will talk about some of those later. But the point is, I'm not worried about Luis Morales' performance this early in spring training. But over the course of the season, I do think there are going to be some ups and downs. And if this guy can be a guy that pitches at the front of the rotation, that's going to be a massive reason why the A's are good this year. That's going to be a massive reason why the A's are good this year. And at the same time, if the ups and downs are a lot and he really struggles, then he's going to be a big reason why you say, hey, the A's didn't turn a corner. The A's pitching staff didn't turn a corner. So that's why Luis Morales is a next factor for me. And finally, my number one biggest X factor for this A's team this year is Denzel Clark. So people forget, because there's just so much focus on the pitching staff. This A's defense was fairly atrocious for a year and a half before Denzel Clark got to the big leagues. And this guy turned basically a well below average defense into a league average defense almost single-handedly. Everything Nick Kurtz is to hitting, this guy is to defense. As in, this guy is generational. You can watch the A's for 50 more years, and they might never have a center fielder with this level of ability. And it's not just raw athleticism, because center field across Major League Baseball has some of the best athletes in the world, and none of them get to the balls that Denzel Clark gets to. He is an incredible athlete combined with incredible instincts, incredible jumps. Obviously, there's a level of work ethic that it takes to become this level of defender in the outfield. He has absolutely everything you need to be a Gold Glove outfielder and a Platinum Glove outfielder, which is rare, which is incredibly rare. And the other thing, too, we talked about it last week when we went through the A's pitching staff. If you're going to have fly ball pitchers that don't get a lot of strikeouts, you might as well have one of the best outfield defenses in baseball to run down those fly balls that do stay in the yard. And with Denzel in center, you go with Tyler Soderstrom, who's above average in left. You get Denzel, who's elite in center. And then you get Lawrence Butler, who's probably a tick above average in right. And collectively, that's as good of an outfield defense as you're going to find in baseball. And again, the best way to help out young pitchers, the best way to help out fly ball pitchers, is play great defense behind them. And at least in the outfield, Denzel Clark allows that. Right? But we all kind of know that. So we also all know what the major flaw is, and that's, is he going to hit enough? Is he going to hit enough? So Denzel Clark is interesting because you've seen him hit a 471-foot home run in the major leagues. Like the raw power is there. The bat speed is really, really good too. Like you look on Baseball Savant, his bat speed is some of the highest on the A's. This guy's a great athlete that can really swing a bat, but he has two major flaws, and they're pretty obvious. And I would say maybe three major flaws. He didn't walk very much. He struck out a lot. And when he makes contact, it's typically ground balls. Now, old school baseball thinking is, hey, if you're that fast, hit the ball on the ground. It just creates a situation where there's a lot of luck involved when you put that many balls on the ground, and you're not going to do damage, right? So you combine those ground balls with strikeouts. He's kind of in this way. I compared him to Nick Kurtz earlier. He's the complete opposite of Nick Kurtz. When Nick Kurtz makes contact, it's the best contact there is, really hard in the air. Denzel Clark is the opposite. He strikes out a lot, but when he does make contact, it's typically on the ground. And it's not, at least last year, wasn't absolutely crushed. That's the bad news. There's also, he's probably always going to be a streaky hitter. Like these long, lanky athletes, a lot of times there's just so much that has to be synced up correctly to hit a baseball that some of these guys with longer levers struggle to do that. And that makes them kind of streaky hitters. It's actually kind of an advantage to have short arms as a hitter because there's just less that can go wrong. But he's a guy with long levers. It's tough to sync them up. And because of that, he's probably going to be streaky. But with that, he had some really good streaks last year. He ended the year hitting really, really well. And his overall numbers don't look that bad. I mean, he hit 230. I think he had 3 home runs. And you will sign up for that in a heartbeat with Denzel Clark, right? This is a guy that he doesn't have to hit 250. This guy doesn't even have to hit 240 to be a core piece of this A's team moving forward. If this guy hits 230 with 12 home runs, lock it in. This guy is a core player moving forward. He's going to be one of the most important players on the A's this year. He's going to be one of their guys moving into the next era in Las Vegas if he can consistently hit 230. Now, is he going to do that? Obviously, that's the question. He needs to make more contact. He needs to elevate the ball a little bit more so that he's at least hitting line drives. That'll allow the power to play because there is real power there. It just doesn't show up because the balls are on the ground most of the time and he swings and misses so much. This guy does have the tools to be a good offensive player, but it is a lot to ask him to improve the strikeout rate, walk more, and start to hit the ball in the air a little bit more. That's a big ask, and there's a lot that has to go right. But again, this isn't a guy that he has to hit 250. All he has to do is hit 230, and this is a long-term core player because if you have a guy at a premium position winning platinum gloves out there, fine, hit 230. That's something the A's need, right? The A's have plenty of bat-first guys. The issue is they don't have a lot of glove-first players, and this is the most glove-first player you can possibly have, and he's at a premium position, and he really fits what the A's are building because if you're going to have fly ball pitchers, you might as well have the best outfielder in baseball running balls down for those fly balls that do stay in the yard. I think he's a really, really important piece to this A's team this year. If you look back at the end of the year and this guy hits 230 and he's just a 9-hole hitter that's consistent and he plays the defense that he's played all year or all his career and he stays healthy, you're going to look back and say, man, this is a huge reason why the A's were good this year. But if he can't and he's hitting 180 after the first 2 months, then that kind of puts the A's in a little bit of a bind because you're just not going to be good defensively if he's not out there. The A's just don't have the talent defensively to still be average defensively if Denzel Clark is not on the field. Now, there are some options if he doesn't work out. Jeff McNeil has played a lot of outfield, including a lot of center field last year. He wasn't great in center field, but you can improve the lineup offensively pretty much instantaneously by putting Ibanez or Hernandez at second and putting Jeff McNeil in center field. That's one option that immediately will improve the offense, and that could be a go-to if Denzel Clark struggles early. The other thing is that Henry Bolte is obviously a guy that a lot of people are excited about and has performed well in spring training so far. Really small sample size, but he's done well so far, and he has all these tools. He's not viewed as like an elite defender in center, although the tools suggest he probably should be. But he could be a right fielder, and you could slide Lawrence Butler over to center. You could just put him in center and say, hey, get your reps, go learn the position, and you're our guy out there. You also have guys like Colby Thomas that have significant power upside that could play one of the outfield spots, and Butler could slide to center. Carlos Cortez flashed some good stuff at the end of last year. So there's plenty of ways the A's could fill that void offensively in center. And almost all of those options improves the A's from an offensive standpoint. But for this team to be average defensively, which I think is important when you have a young pitching staff and the pitching staff might be the weakness, to at least have an average defense, you need Denzel Clark on the field. And if this guy is that elite center fielder he's been in the past, then that is a massive, massive reason the A's are going to be successful this year. So that's my biggest X factor. I think there is a chance all four of these guys are all-stars, and there's also a chance all four of these guys are in the minor leagues come the all-star break. But again, Denzel Clark's my biggest one because I just think it is so important to have an elite defender in center field with the A's or how the A's are constructed as a roster. And so that's a guy I'm really rooting for. I'm really, really hoping that he can provide even below average league offense. As long as it's not atrocious, he's a guy that can make a massive impact for the A's. So those are my X factors. I want to touch on spring training a little bit because we're a few weeks into spring training now. We've gotten to see a lot of guys play, a lot of guys pitch, and I just kind of want to talk about like what I think is important. Like I said earlier, I don't really think there's any negatives that can happen in spring training this early on, at least, unless there are injuries. I think injuries are the only negative that can come of this because guys have plenty of time. If a guy shows up and his velo's down a little bit, there's plenty of time to get that velo up. If a guy has a couple rough performances early, we're not going to remember that come opening day, especially we're not going to remember that after his first major league outing of the year in the regular season. We're not even going to remember that 2 or 3 spring training outings from now if a pitcher goes up there and gets lit up. Jack Perkins is a great example of this. He didn't have a great first outing, but his second outing is so good. Like, who cares about that first outing now? I don't really think there's any negatives that can come from it, but I do think there are some positives specifically on the pitching side. So the thing I pay attention to early in spring training is the stuff of the pitchers and if there's any significant jumps forward with that stuff. And the biggest one that I think we can talk about is JT Ginn. He's obviously thrown 5 shutout innings. He's only given up on hit, I believe, to this point. The biggest thing is last year I talked about all left-handed hitters turned into Hall of Famers against JT Ginn. They had a 1046 OPS against JT Ginn last year. And the biggest thing for his success is going to be to get left-handers out. Now, in his 2 outings, it's a really small sample size, so I do want to emphasize that. But he's faced quality major league left-handed hitters, and they're 0 for 7 with 4 strikeouts against him so far. And I don't think that that's nothing. So I do think there is something to be taken away from that. He's throwing a cutter a little bit more to left-handed hitters. That's been more effective this spring. He's come out and generally filled up the zone. He's gotten ground balls. He's gotten weak contact. I think there's a lot of good things to look at there. Because like I talked about, this guy is so close to being a really good starting pitcher. And if he starts getting lefties out like he's flashed this spring, he's going to be one of the best starting pitchers on the A's staff this year. So I do think that's a good sign, and I'm really looking forward to him keeping that up. I'm really hoping he does. I think Gage Jump, seeing what he did yesterday, is a big positive. Seeing one of your top prospects go out there and throw really, really well against major league competition from the left side, he's up to 98. Like, there is nothing not to like about this kid, on top of the fact he's just kind of a bulldog on the mound. So I think that's something that's really, really positive to see. Luis Medina had his first outing today after coming off Tommy John surgery. And it wasn't the cleanest outing. He gave up a run. He gave up a couple hits. But he was throwing 99 miles an hour. And that's the biggest thing. I was worried he would come out after Tommy John and he might be throwing, 94, 95. And if that's the case, it's just not going to work. But he looked like Luis Medina pre-injury. He was upper 90s sinkers. He's a guy that I think can have a real shot at being an impact guy in the bullpen, similar to Elvis Alvarado, like I talked about earlier. And this is a guy that gets balls on the ground, and he has some of the best stuff on the staff. So I was really excited to see that. I'm really hoping that the command starts to come together in his next few outings. Typically, command is really bad your first few outings back from Tommy John. So I'm not worried about his command being a little shaky. It doesn't even have to be good command. It can just be below average command, and he'll be an effective reliever, in my opinion. Right? It's similar to like Denzel Clark. Like he doesn't even have to be average with the bat. He just has to be a little bit below average instead of a lot below average with the bat for him to be successful. I think it's the same with Luis Medina's command. I thought that was really, really positive to see. There's definitely been some positives out of spring training. With the hitters, I just think the sample size is too small to really take like positives or negatives away from it, because there's just a lot that can happen. And like I said, let's say there's a guy who's off to a really hot start, Daryl Harnais, and trust me, I'd rather have him hitting well than hitting poorly, and he's hitting really, really well, and I'm happy about that. But if he finishes spring training 0 for 10, and Brett Harris finishes spring training 6 for 10 with 2 home runs and 2 doubles, then all of a sudden things are going to shift back to a guy like that being more of the fan favorite. So I think it's too early to get anything from these sample sizes. But again, the thing I think you can take away is if a pitcher's stuff looks good, if a pitcher's stuff looks crisp, then that's a positive thing. So I'm excited about JT Ginn. I'm excited about Gage Jump. I'm excited about what I saw from Luis Morales. And I'm excited about what I've seen from the A's so far. Again, their record's not the best, but the bats are starting to come around. I was never worried about the bats, but it's annoying when they're losing games and they're not scoring runs. If I'm going to tune into a spring training game, I want to see the A's hit some bombs. I want to see the A's play well. It was nice to see that today. And I think that's something they're going to continue to do moving forward. That's what I got for you guys today. Again, X factors. If the A's are good, it is because of this guy. If the A's are bad, it is because of this guy. That's what we're going to be saying at the end of the year. Those are my 4 X factors. We got Elvis Alvarado out of the bullpen. We got Max Muncy on the infield. We have Luis Morales in the rotation. And then our biggest X factor, in my opinion, is Denzel Clark, because he provides something that nobody else in the minor league system or the major league roster can provide, and that's elite defense at a premium position. So that's what I got for you guys today. Again, guys, like, subscribe, share, spread the word about what we're doing here. A's fans, we need more podcasts. What we're doing here, I think, is really cool, and I'm excited to continue to be a part of it. But that's what I got for you guys today. Again, this is Where Stats Meet Instinct. I'm your host, Sam. You can find me on Twitter at Straight A's. That will be it for this episode. And as always, go A's.